What is up, everyone? Today I'm going to be doing a review of the ZOHD Dart 250G. I love this little plane, and today I'm going to talk about what I like about it, why I chose it, how I built it in iNav, and give you some general fixed wing setup tips. So here's a 30-second video with the Runcam Thumb 2, and yeah, let's get into it. Alright, let's get into it. So before I get started, I do have some affiliate links for the items and equipment that I use for this, so if you guys can use those below, that would really appreciate it. Help support the channel. So before, if you're getting into this stuff, you're probably trying to choose between quads and fixed wings, right? So at least that's where I was. I'm mostly a quad guy, but I was kind of interested in fixed wings and I wanted to get into them a little bit more. And so I think this is like a really great wing to get into it. Quads, I would describe them as they're like really fun, they're fast, they're exciting to fly, and planes can be that way too. You can fly them like very acrobatically. But what I was going for was just like a very relaxed and fun flyer, something that I could kind of long range. And fixed wings are really good at long range versus drones. They're just so much more efficient. I can fly almost 20 miles on a 2S 3000 milliamp hour lithium ion battery for this little drone, which is just crazy. I can fly for almost 30 minutes, 20 miles, and if you put that on a drone, it's got 4 motors, it's not nearly as efficient, so they're great for a long range. And so yeah, I was just going for something that I can throw up in the air. Basically, if I want to, just turn my OSD off and just fly around a field forever. So fun. And then I could also just do some long range and stuff with that as well. So that's kind of what I was going for with this one. And so why did I choose the ZOHD Dart 250G? So there are a lot of really great wings out there, and they're all very different. Quads tend to fly, you have cinder whoops and regular quads, but wings can really fly very differently from my experience. I've only owned a few. I've owned the Wing Ranger T1, which is at the bottom right here, and I built myself a little DIY Lidl glider. And so I'm gonna just kind of show you the drones and the fixed wings that I was deciding on, that I had to choose between when I was choosing this one. And so we'll start with the top left, the Adam RC Flying Fish. And that's a really fun little FPV wing. Seems like a super fun park flyer. It's really small, very lightweight, but it's much smaller, and you're not going to be able to really get your full iNav stuff in it. You're probably not going to have room for GPS, blah blah blah. You have you have to keep things a lot lighter, and I don't even know if you really have room for a full flight controller. So super fun if you're just looking to fly around the park. That one looks like a really fun plane. One of the ones that I want to try next. The plane that I also have these organized kind of from smallest to largest, the wings that I was considering getting. And next is the Strix Nano Goblin, which I'd say is the closest wing to the ZOHD Dart 250G. I'd say the ZOHD Dart 250G kind of falls somewhere right around here, kind of a little bit bigger than the Strix Nano, and then smaller than the rest of them generally. So the Strix Nano, people build it very similarly to how I would have built this one. You can kind of do a full iNav setup and everything. People love this plane. There's a bit of a cult following with it. I didn't go with it for kind of two main reasons. One, it's a bit smaller, so it's going to get thrown around by the wind a bit more. And I live in a pretty windy area, so that wasn't going to be as good for me. And then since it is smaller, if you do the same thing, everything that I put on this plane, it's going to be kind of heavier relative to the size of the wings that you have, and so you're gonna have to fly it faster, and which is fine. But I was hoping for something that I could at least cruise around a little bit with. The ZOHD Dart 250G is I would categorize it. It's not a super slow flyer like this. The Adam RC Flying Fish is a super slow flyer, and the ZOHD Dart, the ZOHD Drift is a pretty slow flyer. And some of these other planes, like the Penguin and the Torpedo, are really fast flyers, and I'd categorize the Dart as kind of something in the middle. And so, yeah, and then final thing that I almost went with the Strix Nano Goblin, but the other reason I didn't go with it is because since it's smaller, you have less room to kind of like wiggle things around. And I'll get to that a little bit later in the build, but I have plenty of room to like move my battery forward and backward to kind of accommodate different sizes of battery and different, like if I want to put a like action camera on there or not, I can kind of like do that. But whereas with this Strix Nano, you'd kind of have to really like lock everything in, and you can only fly like pretty specifically like one way. Next, the ZOHD Drift seems like a really fun flyer, but a little bit more floaty and very light, pretty lightweight, so it can be pretty susceptible to wind. The rest of these are so the Adam RC Penguin looks like a really fun plane. If I was to get an acrobatic plane, that's probably what I would go for. That one I think runs on 6S, so it's like a big, like fast, dual prop, dual motor, like acrobatic plane in my opinion. You can long range it too, for sure. But it was just like a little bit more than I was looking for. I really like the size of the ZOHD Dart 250G because I can just like throw it in the seat, throw it up on the throw it on a shelf. You don't have to have like a dedicated like wall space for it or somewhere to store it. Whereas with some of these wings that are getting bigger, you kind of have to have that. I almost went with the Chapito as well, but it's quite a bit bigger as well, and faster, bigger. It looks a little bit less efficient as well because I think I could be wrong about that one, but the Dart has a pretty decent at least wing to area that its size is, whereas this guy's a bit more of like a ripper around. So that's pretty good. And then if you're looking for something that's like more of a cruiser, I would recommend the He-Wing Ranger T1, awesome little plane, or kind of similarly the Adam RC Swordfish, pretty similar to the He-Wing Ranger. But I ended up landing on the ZOHD Dart 250G. I've been super happy with it. Things that it's really good with. I kind of mentioned some of these already, but good at long range, handles wind really well. It can carry a lot, so it has a full featured iNav, GPS, and all the beeper and all the other stuff, full FPV system. Things that it's not as good at though compared to some of the others, and I'll get into this a little bit later as well. But launching this plane is, I'd say, pretty difficult. I go to a very big hill and I like throw it off the hill, and I have plenty of space for it to kind of fall as it goes. And like Painless 360's videos, he talks about this plane, and he had a hard time getting it to launch. And in my experience, the way I have it built, at least, it's pretty heavy, and it doesn't just like rocket up into the air, which some of these planes probably would, especially like some of these bigger ones, like the Penguin, for example. That's going to just like rocket straight up into the air. The way I have my plane built is definitely going to be not as good at just like launching straight up, which is fine. You just got to go to a hill. So I still love it very much, but that's kind of a downside of this plane. It's somewhat difficult to launch, at least if you make it heavy. I imagine if you ran it on like 3S and had a very lightweight build on it, it could do that, but I don't have it set up that way.
All right, next I'm going to talk about different ways that you can fly this plane. And that's one of the things that I really love about the ZOHD Dart 250G is at least it's like somewhat flexible in how you can fly it, which is pretty fun. So my favorite way to fly it is with the 2S Lithium Ion pack. It's amazing, so fun, and it's on the 2S blade. It weighs, the way I have it set up is just over 300 grams. So I kind of have it set up pretty heavy. The battery's super heavy. It's like 100 grams. VTX is kind of heavy. That's what it is. It flies. I like how it flies with this, though. I think it's a great way to go. I've also tried it with obviously I've tried it with the Runcam thumb, and then I added a long range antenna. So this is kind of like the heaviest 2S setup that you would ever be able to run it on. So it's still 2S, same battery, but then it's quite a bit heavier from that action cam. And I was surprised it was I flew it back to back with the action cam and not, and it was pretty stable with the action cam. I felt myself being knocked around by the wind a little bit less, which I guess makes sense, right? So it's a little bit more stable, but the launch was definitely a little bit like kind of rough. It dips down a bit, so you definitely have to be on a hill somewhere it can kind of drop down before it will rise back up, which is totally fine. And then it's going to be lower power, obviously. Makes sense. It's heavier, and you don't have any more prop or anything. And like kind of like I mentioned earlier, you can definitely run this on 3S with a 3S prop. I didn't really like how this felt. And I don't really know. The propeller and motor are just too small to run well on 3S in my opinion. And so if I was to run it on 3S, I think 3S 3S battery, 2S prop, probably be really great. It would probably rip. I don't know how heavy that would be, but I think that would be a lot of fun. But you're definitely like kind of edge of the performance for your motor slash ESC. And so if you were to do this, maybe upgrade your motor and ESC, and that would be a super fun way to fly it. You could also do, and I have not tested these here at the bottom, but I think it'd also be pretty fun to do like a 2S lightweight or a 3S lightweight build with this thing. I imagine they would be, a little bit more thrown around by the wind, but you'd probably gain some speed if you were lighter, and you'd also probably have easier hand launches. So another greater way to build this, I think, for probably 2S where it would shine, 2S lightweight build would be, don't use a flight controller, just use a receiver, like an Express LRS, like PWM receiver. So you could just use directly the plug that comes with the kit or the PNP version. So you plug it right into the power of that receiver, and then have your servos come off of channels from that. And you wouldn't have any sort of like flight controller help, you'd just be flying it manually. But I think that'd be pretty fun. Maybe if I had an extra one of these one day, maybe I'd try that.
All right, let's get into it. So I have a little diagram here to show you how I balanced and designed the center of gravity of my plane. So on the bottom of the plane, you have these little tabs here that you balance you put your fingers under it. I don't have battery in right now, so it's not gonna actually balance, but put your fingers under here like this, and it should be level or slightly nose heavy. It's better to be nose heavy. It'll just need to fly faster, but if it's tail heavy, it'll like dolphin and you won't be able to fly very well at all. So the center of gravity of the plane is here, and basically what you need to do is you need to balance everything on the front half of that center of gravity point to the back half of the center of gravity point. So, and I'm actually going to show you how you can calculate and kind of understand how these things work. So say you have something heavy on the back, my VTX is right about here, right? So the VTX is right here, say it weighs, I don't know, about 20 grams, right? I have a fairly heavy VTX. I'm not sure how much it actually is, but say it's 20 grams. And then you say the distance from the center of gravity to here is, oh, I don't know, say it's like 10 centimeters. And then, so say you only have two things. You have your VTX, which is right here, and then say I have my big heavy battery, which is right here. And so that's putting a force on this side, which is, it's a little bit, my battery is very heavy. So it's 100 grams-ish, 2S lithium ion battery. And so this is like a bit of a shorter distance, right, to the center of gravity point. Say that's maybe 5 centimeters. So basically what you do is you put an equal sign on each side, and everything in the front half is got to equal the weight times the distance. So that's 500 grams centimeters is what the unit would be. And on the back side, it's 200 or 20 times 10. Sorry for my awful handwriting using a mouse. And so that's 200. So right now it would be very nose heavy if those were the only two things on the plane. It would cause a rotation that way, and it would be super nose heavy this way. And so basically what you got to do is you got to say all the things on the left side, so your battery plus your VTX plus maybe you have a GPS back here, equals your, put an equal sign, so it's like weight times distance equals everything on the front. The only things I have on the front are the battery, so it's battery plus camera, and I have a very lightweight camera on the front. And so that's how I do it. And if you guys will notice, I designed my Runcam Nano to be very close to the center of gravity. It's like very slightly forward here. So that way, if I do add the Runcam Nano, it's pretty heavy and it's pretty close to the center of gravity, and I don't have to like adjust a lot of things to like move it forward and backward. And I'll kind of talk about it right now. So my VTX is here in the back. I'll pull this little cover off here. The VTX is here in the back, and this is a great little VTX. I've been pretty happy with it so far. It hasn't been amazing, but it's been pretty good. But I was doing all my calculations and I basically did a dry fit. I put everything on the plane and kind of where I thought it was going to be, and I thought it should go. I thought the plane was going to end up kind of nose heavy, so I put it pretty far back, and I actually put it. I might have put it a little too far back, honestly, because it still works totally fine, but my battery's got to be all the way pretty much at the very front of where I fly it. And if I was to do this build again, I would move the VTX like very slightly forward, or maybe choose a lighter VTX. So that's kind of how you can. This isn't specific to this plane at all, but that's kind of how the trade-off. So you can either, if you have a lighter weight VTX than I do, you can move it further forward, and then you have less backwards kind of tilt, and then get everything balanced that way. Or if you have a, yeah, that's basically kind of how you can like balance all these things out. So I hope this is helpful for you guys to kind of visualize how to design where everything's going to go. So how does it actually go? So I'm going to start from back to the front, right? So you got your motors, got this little cover here. This cover is nice, but it does kind of fall off, and I'm afraid of losing it. So I'm not really sure what to do. I like that it kind of pops off, but honestly, I'm kind of done doing everything back here, so I might just glue it down. But I really appreciate how lightweight it is. Some people make like 3D prints, and if your nose is super, like if your plane is super nose heavy, maybe a heavy 3D print at the back is fine, but not the best if for me it's great because I have a nice lightweight thing back here. So then I have my VTX, which I would like to have these little fins kind of, ideally they'd be running with airflow this way, but basically my cables and my antenna were going this way, so kind of have to have it that way, which is fine. And then the antenna kind of comes out here, and then I have it going through this little like mount. Actually, it's from a different drone. I think is the Chimera 5, this little plastic mount that could be used for antenna, which works pretty well. I basically screwed it in, added a little bit of super glue, and then added a bit of hot glue as well. And then I basically just have that little wire there. I wrapped some tape around the wire to make it kind of snug in there. It doesn't really, it has a little bit of wiggle and move, but it's pretty solid. And I have, so this is a Foxy Lollipop 4, which is an awesome little antenna. I've been pretty happy with this one. And I also got a HLRC hammer, which I'm still kind of testing on. I'm not sure if it's going to, I don't know if it's a great antenna or not, but theoretically, you kind of put this like very, sorry about the camera angle here, but you put this very long antenna and you can go a little bit farther because the, like for example right now, if I was flying at myself, you can kind of see it here, the camera, if I was flying with the Runcam Thumb 2, the video signal would be very much blocked by this antenna, but you can kind of get this antenna higher and get yourself a little bit more range that way. So yeah, going from the back to the front, I have this little, actually I'll talk about the canopy next. I love this canopy. I've only owned one other like kind of professionally made drone, or fixed wing you might say, and yeah, this canopy is awesome. It like kind of latches in, and then these magnets hold it right down. Super great. And then I have the Runcam Thumb 2 mount here, which I'll talk about in a minute. But the I replaced, there's like a little I don't know, like a carbon fiber piece I think, which works really well. But I decided to put the action camera mount there, and I just kind of screwed it in the back from the top, and this is super stable. And if I wanted to not fly with the action camera on, I could take this piece off as well and then just basically use it as the same piece, which is awesome. And then it's a big old mess of wires in there, so I apologize about that. This plane is a little bit small, but I'll get into everything that's kind of in there in a minute. And then finally I got my, this is the battery that I'm using. This is a homemade 2S 3000 milliamp hour battery, which I've been super happy with. Love the flight times on this thing. I ended up having to place it kind of like right about here, and then plugs right into the drone. Looks great. And then I have a FPV CO3 camera on here, which is pretty awesome. The Maiden, I had a Runcam Nano camera on, and that was fine, but I think the CO3 is a bit of an upgrade. And then I did run it for a little bit on a 3S pack, and I didn't have a larger 3S pack. Basically, the way I have it set up is it's somewhat tail heavy from this big VTX and how I have everything else. So I had to put two 660 3S packs on here, and then a couple batteries, pennies to make weight, and then I just ran like a parallel XT30, like two XT30s to one XT30, which worked really well for me. And then on 3S, although I don't love flying on 3S, but it like works at least. All right, let's talk about the electronics and how I have everything set up. It's pretty tight in here, so it's gonna be hard to kind of show you guys. I do have the flight controller just kind of screwed down in there into the foam. It's been pretty solid. But beyond that, so let's kind of start how you get it. So the drone comes from the manufacturer with, if you get the PMP version, which I highly recommend, you might as well get the servos that come with it, and you get the ESC up here at the top left. And so you plug in your battery here, and then those this goes to your motors. And then from the ESC, you're going to have two wires coming out. One is battery voltage. So battery voltage goes here to your flight controller, ground, and battery voltage. And then here, the ESC also has a 5-volt regulator on it, which is great. My flight controller also has a 5-volt regulator, so I used that for some things. I used the 5-volt regulator from here on other things. It's just kind of depending on what was more convenient for me. So basically, I cut this wire here, cut this wire here, and then soldered these to the 2 wires coming from the flight controller. This was mostly pretty much a solderless free build. I just used the plugs that came with this flight controller, which is the Radiolink F722, by the way. I don't like highly recommend it or anything, but it's been working pretty well for me. It's technically a 3.6S flight controller, but it's been working great on 2S, so I don't really have any complaints. I don't have any reason to believe that it doesn't work perfectly on 2S, because it has been for me. And then, so, where were we? So, battery voltages go into the flight controller, and then I have the 5-volt regulator doing a few things. I think that one I have powering the servos directly, which is a good use for those. So the servos are going to have 3 wires coming from them. I don't have like if you had like the Wing Mini, F45 Wing Mini, I forget who makes that flight controller, but some of the flight controllers have like actual just plugs, which are great, and you can just plug these directly into your flight controller. Mine does not have that, so I was using the plugs from the flight controller. And if you didn't know, you can kind of take apart the GST connectors that are here and pull out wires that you don't need and rearrange wires as you do need, which I did a lot for with this build, which is super convenient. You just kind of get a knife under the side of the JST connector and then pull out the wire, put it in a different spot, or switch wires around. So you definitely can't just like trust that the way they have the wire set up is going to be exactly how it's going to be needed for you. So for example, with my camera, there's a camera connect port here, goes 5-volt ground and cam. I don't think I had to like move the wires around, but I double checked them before I plugged them in. And then that kind of thing. So servos I have going here, and then I also have 5 volts kind of branching off. So I have a wire going to the servos, and then I have the wire split, I guess actually three times. Splits over here, and one goes to each servo. So red and black wire go to the servo, and then the servos also have a white wire, which I have connected to, I believe, I think it doesn't really matter, but M3, M4. Those are the white wires. It's going to get messy, but I hope you guys can follow along. And then I have another 5-volt wire going to my Runcam Nano. Sorry, not my Runcam Nano, but Runcam Thumb 2. I'm going to say T2. And so that's a great little setup that I feel like I have going here. I have this wire, which I'm going to get everything plugged in. I'll just show you how this one specifically works. I basically just soldered a wire to the 5-volt regulator line that comes out and then plugs directly into the back of the Runcam Nano. So I can just like power directly from the flight controller and 5-volt regulator on the drone, which is awesome. Works really well. And then let's see what else. So I was getting a little bit ahead of myself with the servo. So there's also a third white wire here. That's going to be the wire that needs to go to, I have it on M1, and that's like, you set up your in iNav your it's just like motor output basically for the ESC. So that's great. And then that's kind of all of the like moving parts of the drone. And yeah, so battery voltage going to the flight controller, and then motor. So I have everything, all the moving parts taken care of. So now let's talk about all the other things. So I meant to mention before, but I would recommend you build this one piece at a time. Kind of plug, like, I built everything outside of the the drone and then kind of made sure everything was working before I like installed everything. Because it's really nice to, it's really difficult to like install everything, troubleshoot things, and have to pull things back out. So I would recommend kind of installing it as you go, or not installing it as you go, but troubleshoot and build it as you go. And one thing that I did do that I think saved me a bit of hassle and headache was the servo wires. I don't have plugs for them, which would have been solved if I had like a F4 or 5 Wing Mini or something. But I installed two disconnects, so I can just like disconnect these. The disconnects are here and here, so that was really convenient for I could troubleshoot with the wing completely off and the flight controller entirely outside of the controller, entirely outside of the plane. So that was pretty convenient. So yeah, next things, everything else is pretty straightforward. You just plug it in where it makes sense to go. I used an HGLRC Express LRS receiver, which 5 volt to 5 volt, ground to ground, and then T2. So the T transmission goes to receiver, so TX to RX, and then RX to TX. You gotta cross those. That's how you connect your receiver. GPS, pretty straightforward. Just make sure your wires are all good. I had to, I think, rearrange some of the wires. I was doing the pulling out little pieces of JST connector as I referenced earlier. And then camera, yeah, 5 volt ground and cam. I didn't use the CC, whatever it is. And then lastly, the VTX. So I had to do a little funky thing with the VTX. So my VTX requires 7 to 25 volts, and my 2S battery is not going to be above 7 volts the entire time I'm flying. So I bought this little. It takes a range of inputs. I believe it's like, I don't know, like 3 to 9 volt input, and then it outputs anything between 12 and 5. So I have the I believe I have that connected through the battery line. I can't remember exactly. But it basically, you go, let's double check that. This is coming from, feedback. I don't know if this is connected. I should have reviewed this before I began talking to you guys. Yeah, it's just coming directly from the battery. So I have the battery going, this is battery voltage, goes to the input here, and then it outputs 12, a nice clean 12 volts. I have had a little bit of static in my video. I need to like think about adding a low ESR capacitor or figuring out something else to maybe reduce some of the electrical noise that I'm getting, or maybe find a cleaner way to do this. Maybe this is like a low quality solution, but it's working for sure. Maybe I could get better analog signal, which, by the way, obviously this is all analog. If you're running, I like running analog, a fairly lightweight stuff. I'm kind of tempted by some of the like HD systems, like the ArtLink or the whatever Cadix's new Ascent system is. That'd be kind of cool to put on a plane like this. But for now, I'm very happy with analog because analog's awesome for long range. And then what else do I have? I have T1 going to the flight controller, goes to the receiver part of the flight controller, and then I have flight controller's powered, and then obviously I have the VTX wire going to the flight controller. I was going to say video transmitter. So that's how I have everything wired up for this bad boy. It's a bit of a mess. Oh, and then finally, I had the one thing that I did have to solder was the buzzer. So some flight controllers have a BZ plus, BZ minus, super easy to use. I don't have it connected right now, but I believe it is this little wire. So you just plug in. Sometimes you have to have a third wire, but if you have a BZ minus, BZ plus, which this flight controller does, it's super convenient. You can just directly plug, and then that's. I highly recommend the buzzer if you're doing long range because it'll beep if it crashes somewhere and the battery gets ejected. So speaking of battery, I'm going to talk about something I really like about this plane, and I think it's a great, awesome lightweight solution. It has worked really well. They just include a little piece of like Velcro, and you just put one side on the plane and one side on your battery, And I've crashed this plane several times, unfortunately. Not bad crashes, but very hard crashes, hard landings, enough to like flip it over as it crashes, that kind of thing. I was actually flying the other day and it was too cold, I guess, in my lithium ion battery. I didn't realize this, but it was like 20 degrees Fahrenheit outside, and lithium ion battery just kind of like I don't know. I guess lithium ion is somewhat susceptible to cold, so it just kind of died and just like fell out of the sky. I was able to kind of crash land it, but it didn't end up working for me. So, or it ended up recovering fine. But yeah, let's talk about what do we talk about next? So, things I really like about this, kind of some like general setup things. I really like the design generally. There's some really thoughtful things that they've done to keep everything lightweight, which I like a lot. And I really like these covers for the servos, so you don't get your servos all messed up when you're landing. These little pads here are great. I happened to crash pretty hard on like a rock when I was like doing that crash landing. Sorry, I was out of view right there. But like these little like skid pads like covered it pretty nicely. And yeah, sometimes when I crash hard, the wings kind of pop up, but they usually pop right back in. They did an awesome balance of like the lighter weight foam is kind of where it should be, I think, in the black. Heavier duty foam is like definitely where it should be as well. I love that a lot. I did add some tape kind of to the front of these. The only place that I really found it kind of useful, the very first time I flew it, I didn't have any tape, and I kind of landed hard on one of the wings, and at the very edge here, it was kind of like getting very dirty and scuffed up a bit, so I just kind of threw a little bit of super glue back on there, and then threw some tape over it to kind of protect it. Maybe I would have appreciated some like black kind of around the wing here as well, because those kind of edges can get scuffed up pretty well. But yeah, so that's kind of the wiring and everything. Let me talk about the how everything kind of laid out. So obviously talked about my VTX antenna, and then I already kind of showed you the Runcam thumb, and kind of the two ways that I can run my antenna. One thing I do like about this receiver is it comes with a longer antenna and a shorter one. When I'm doing like a longer range fly, I might kind of attach like this. You get the antenna nice high and away from everything, get awesome reception. And then if I'm not going to be flying far away, what I'll do is I'll kind of route it through this little air intake, and then kind of have it just come back out the front there, and that works really well. Put the shorter antenna on, you could do it with the longer one as well. The one thing that I haven't quite sorted out yet is what to do with my GPS. So if as you can see, I have, so what works for sure is to kind of just like tape it on here. That's what I've done a couple times for my flights. Originally I was planning to kind of have it back here, but it kept like sliding around and getting covered by VTX wires, and it wasn't really working very well. It wasn't getting enough satellites, and so I've also just kind of flown with it like tucked inside here, which works decently well. It has worked for me before, but then when I added this thing, it doesn't work as well anymore. And then if the Runcam Thumb 2 is on here, it doesn't work at all. And then it actually doesn't even work very well with the Runcam Thumb on in this position. So I need to do some sorting out with the GPS. I don't really want to cut into this like lighter weight foam because I hate to do some structural and reduce the structural integrity, but just kind of figuring out how we're doing that. So yeah, lots to figure out. Still some more things to figure out there, but generally super happy with how everything is set up.
All right, and now we're going to walk through the iNav part of everything, and you can definitely find good tutorials on how to do this from lots of different people, but I'll quickly walk through everything. This is not going to be this will be like a medium beginner walkthrough. So let's see. So I have, you'll walk through your flight controller calibration, which is pretty straightforward. The only thing with this one is I'll mention I mounted the flight controller so that the USB port is facing forward. That's towards like the nose of the plane. That's basically the only way that you can mount it so that it can comfortably, you can get your USB in after you have it installed. So that's definitely important. So mixer, so I have it set up as an airplane and a flying wing. And so then you're going to have it's set up where you can actually have, I guess, or yeah, two servos and one motor. That's how I have it set up. So timer 2 is motors, timer 3 and 4 is servos, And I think right now it's also set up, you could have LEDs on there, but I'm not using those. That's just kind of the default. And so I'll get to the resource mapping at the end when I get to the CLI. So I'll kind of skip these for now a little bit, but right now I have my motor mixer is just throttle. It's, perfectly correlated with the throttle, and that's straightforward. And then for each of your servos, you have stabilized roll and pitch, 50% for each one is how I have it set up right now. And I think that's kind of standard way. Maybe there are better ways to do it, but it works pretty well. And basically, you just have to plug your servos in, however they end up for you. I ended up having to put a negative on one of these because you just plug in your flight controller or power up your drone or your plane, and then if one of the channels is inverted, then you just put a negative % on the weight, and then that'll get you going the correct way. So that's pretty straightforward with the servos. Oh, and I'll also mention that actually, I'll get there in a second. So the outputs. So the way the outputs should be is, I think I have it pretty much like standard, like default everything. The ESC protocol for this guy is standard. It's not going to be like your DSHI if you're kind of used to that for drones. At least the way that the ESC firmware that came stock with it. You might be able to upgrade it. I haven't tried, but I did standard. And then stop motors on low throttle. You definitely want to have that enabled for a glider. I have it also enabled for this one. I don't really know. Maybe it helps with landing. So that's pretty good. I'm pretty sure I counted, and I think there are 12 motor pulls. And then this is where you can set up your motors, test that your motor is working once you have it plugged in and everything. And then you can also test your servers here, or just plugging in and using your controller. I will say one thing that I did do was I added, and it had to be different. I added, I guess, 25 points, or no, 75 points. Sorry, 75 points, or however that translates, of kind of offset on both the servos so that they're slightly tilting up, which is what works pretty well for helping with the launch, I've heard. And it worked well for me as well. I'll show a picture of that. But I basically, when I plugged it in, the servos were flat, and then I adjusted this one up slightly. So the midpoint for these two servos, one I had to go up, one I had to go down, but so that they're 75 points away from midpoint. So they're just like slightly up. That helps with your launches. And then once you're flying, the flight controller would take care of everything to get going. So then your ports are, the way you set up your ports is you look at your flight controller diagram. And so, for example, your receiver is on T2 R2. So that means you need to go to UART2, T2 R2, and set that to your receiver. And then my VTX is on T1 R1. So that's where I have my TBS Smart Audio. And then GPS is on T6 R6, should be. Yep, T6 R6. So that's going to be on UART6. And then you'll set that to your GPS. I was trying to get ESC output / telemetry, and I am not sure if I actually ever got that working. And then configuration, pretty much everything is stock here. I did adjust the minimum cell voltage so that if you're using a lithium ion, you can kind of go lower. You can technically fly these down to 2.5 volts, but I usually land by 3. And then take note of what I have here. Straightforward. I have my VTX channel on. And then failsafe, I have set to return to home, which is great. Tuning, I did stock tuning, and then I did an auto tune process on this. I skipped doing the auto trim because I wanted to keep the kind of slightly up trim settings that I had for launches, which is what I've heard other people say help with launches. So I'm not really sure if that's the best way to do it, but that's what I've done, and it's been working for me. And then advanced tuning, this is where you set your auto launch settings. So these are pretty important. This plane needs everything that it can get on launch. So I have idle throttle at 1700 and launch throttle at 100%, 2000. And then I have a very steep climb angle. And then those are kind of the 3 main things that I set up, and they've been working pretty well for me. Like I said, this plane doesn't launch super great, so maybe there could be some tuning to be had there, but that's what I've been doing, especially given the very heavy battery and it's only a 2S. It's not going to like rocket up into the sky. So that's kind of what I've worked well. And you can kind of adjust these fixed wing navigation settings. I don't have it automatically landing. And then the return to home settings, you can kind of just, if you want to copy mine, feel free. But then I just kind of have them set to my preference for those. programming, I don't have anything there. Receiver, straightforward, just make sure your receiver is working and you got all your channels correctly, mapped, roll, pitch, yaw, etc. And then the modes, pretty straightforward. I have my arm mode, I have it, I have a 3-way switch, so if it's in the down position, it's automatically in acro, and then I can switch it to horizon. I like flying in acro. I've only been flying in acro. It works pretty well for me. And then I also have a cruise, loiter, return to home buttons, and then auto tune and auto trim, which I guess could take off now that I've done those. I might switch those to. It's nice to. I might switch to an OSD off for one of these. Actually, I might just do that now. I'll show you guys. So I like to have OSD off on this one, which right now I have my auto tune on. So I'm going to delete this and then go to add range and then auto, and it'll automatically detect OSD off. I don't know, especially for a fixed wing, sometimes it's just nice to turn off your OSD and just like enjoy the moment flying around, especially when you have a ton of battery. Like this thing can, like if you know you've only been flying for 5 minutes and you still have 20 minutes left that you can fly, just turn off your OSD and enjoy it. It's great. So that's how you map that guy. And then I think, yep, I have my beeper on one of the settings as well. So click save that real quick on there. And then that's just about everything. I don't think there's anything here. Nope. And then GPS, make sure you have this enabled or your GPS won't turn on. Everything else, yeah, serial port, and then everything else I think is default. And then the last thing, oh yeah, OSD. This is all personal preference, but this is what I like to have for my OSD. I like to have battery stuff here, kind of receiver and VTX stuff here, kind of GPS-y and location things up here, and then my fly timer, and then my latitude and longitude. And this is especially nice if you were to crash it somewhere, and at least you, even if you lost your video transmitter and it fell to the ground, at least you'd have some relative like starting point to like go to and hopefully find it. And some of the other things, I did adjust the alarm for, I think there's a fly time alarm. I forget where it is, but fly time, there you go. I think it's automatically by default set to 10 minutes, and this plane can fly longer than that, so might as well turn up the alarm for that one. And I guess if you're going to be flying pretty far away, you want to increase some of these other ones or that kind of thing. And I also did, since I've been launching from a somewhat high hill, I turned off my negative altitude alarm because sometimes I'm flying lower than where I started. And yeah, going back to what I talked about earlier with the ESC telemetry, I did not get that set up. I don't even know if this ESC has telemetry. I have a feeling it doesn't, which is why I wasn't able to get that set up. So when I originally, I tried to do like a current draw meter here, and then it was just like reading zeros or giving me garbage. So I don't think this ESC has a telemetry. If someone knows how to set that up, please let me know, but I don't think it does. And you just won't have that information, which is fine. And then the last thing I want to talk about is the resource mapping. So when you, I'll type in resource here. Come on, what are we doing? Gonna unplug and plug back in my flight controller. By the way, if you are having a hard time getting your flight controller to connect to your computer, sometimes just switching different USBs will be what works. I found that a regular USB on the computer side works better, like a USB-A versus USB-C. For some reason, sometimes those don't work as well for me. I don't really know if others have found the same thing, but here we go, resource. I didn't spell that right. Resource. So when you get your flight controller, it's going to have just defaults. And basically what you have to find is, the way at least I have it programmed, I have the servos on motor 2 and motor 3. So this is originally set up for a quad, right? And so motor 1 I left alone. That's great. And then motor 3 and 4 need to switch to servos. So originally BO4 said motor 3. So then I just typed resource servo 2 to BO4. I think that's the correct syntax for that. and you basically just reassign it and then double check that it says now BO4 servo 2 out, and then servo 3 is on BO6. That's specific. Every flight controller is going to be different, but you got to find where, at least the way I have it wired right now, you're going to switch motor 3 and 4 to servo 2 and 3.
If you guys have enjoyed the video, I'm going to show some flight footage here at the end, and please ask any questions that you have. And yeah, see you guys in the next one.